All right. Good day, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Live the Fuel show. So, today, here in 2025, I'm really trying to increase the amount of new guest co hosts and specifically targeting the first priority of our trifecta of health. And there's a big topic we're going to talk on today, and it's around a very, very common issue, and for some of us out there, chronic issue of headaches. And the expert I'm bringing on today might know a little bit about it, might have a childhood connection on that, and it may literally have driven his entire future career. So he might actually care a little bit about this, and he might be an author because of it as well. So, quick bio on this guy. Literally constant debilitating headaches. And I've had these myself on and off over the years. So I'm intrigued to hear his professional opinion on my own experiences as well. But again, from his youth, again, he was cured by a chiropractor. And I found a chiropractor, those of you who've listened to the show for a long time, years ago, when I was getting ready for my first marathon and jacked myself up because I wasn't training properly. And to this day, I still use chiropractors committed monthly. My wife as well. My wife is also a chiropractor, medicine for animals as well. So I do believe in it. I do trust it. And yes, there's different professionals out there. But even his own background, he was initially misdiagnosed and advised to consult a psychiatrist of all things. And I'm a dual major psychology background. So I think that is funny when I finished my degree, but due to the pain, and then, decide, hey, let me embark on my own mission, understand headaches and the root causes, which is one thing I love about East versus West Coast medicine, chiropractic care versus traditional MD, which I like to change the word on that, traditional versus non-traditional. We can have fun with that too. But this gentleman has over 30 years experience identifying these pain patterns, advocating for drug-free, big fan, drug-free and holistic solutions. Do not get hooked on pharmaceuticals, people. And he's got a thriving practice because of it. So without further ado, Dr. V, sir, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Scott. This is, as you laid out so eloquently, it's a hot subject, hot subject for me. And I got into it because of my headaches and my lust for performance. I was a natural bodybuilder at the time, and I'd get pounding headaches every time I did bench press. And so they said, you might have an aneurysm, and it's, the big scare, like the other side of the alternative medicine, right? If changing your diet and your supplements doesn't take care of it, then the alternative should be drugs or surgery, right? Way down the line. So gave me the freak out and gave my parents the freak out, and it didn't work. I still had headaches. So.
It's a shame that healthcare is still in the state where it is. And no matter your political profession, we don't get into politics and religion on this show because it's just exhausting. So I like to focus on okay, what's working and what's not. And that's where I still have friends, colleagues, and people I connect with to this day, new relationships who still have never been to a chiropractor. Actually, I want to throw in right away here. What are your thoughts on the new, I don't know if you want to call it new, but I'm enjoying the new shift and blending of functional medicine doctors. What are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like we're now taking what and the medical side, because I've met still are MDs that have been purposely realizing they were not being guided by the right education and realized that the drugs and the slicing and dicing doesn't always work. And let's go back, if you will, back to that Eastern medicine influence and say, wait a minute, how do we get the full circle? So what are your thoughts on functional? Because I feel like that's technically what you guys do. You're focusing on the function and the results. It's just not in your job title.
Right. And a lot of chiros do functional medicine. I did a lot of more functional medicine in the earlier days with lab testing and that sort of stuff. And the beauty of functional medicine, quotes, functional medicine is it's bridging the gap, of taking the allopathic approach of labs and that sort of stuff and using supplemental solutions or dietary solutions. And so, yes, it's a beautiful thing. And just like big pharma, I learned most of my liver detox pathways based on the research or the coattails of the research that they did, because drugs need to detox through the liver pathways. So I used that research to then, for me, most of what I do is based on muscle testing. The body will tell a story. That's going to be a theme as we go through this podcast, that pain is intended to elicit change. So when it hurts somewhere, that is your body telling you that, hey, redirect, go, change your diet, increase your supplements, get some, get it taken care of. We'll talk about what, different areas relate to. But again, so big pharma in their research helped me understand what's going on with the liver and the different pathways and the challenge substances that are going to affect each individual pathway. I mean, then the big mind shift blow is that methylation, for example, will activate the tumor suppressor gene. So if methylation is not functioning properly, in functional med, they're going to be looking at MTHFR gene is a lot of what, it's a big hot topic in the press these days.
Especially the past 5 years really got blown up. Yeah. Five to 10. Yeah.
Yeah. And so with that was, the type of folic acid, is it a folic acid or is it a methylfolate that you're taking and all that sort of stuff. So the person that has that MTHFR gene, we're now understanding was a retrovirus, like COVID, for example, was a retrovirus that can potentially affect the way that methylation pathway works. And then it's going to manifest or show up as an MTHFR gene defect. So that person really needs to be careful on what type of folate the folate that they take, and not just a, cheap, off the shelf folic acid type of a supplement, because that's going to compromise that pathway. So there's research, we can, if we could all just get along and, understand, learn from what they're doing. But yeah, ultimately I read those labs often when patients bring them in. But when I was early in practice, I was doing those labs, and I do a, cortisol, 12-hour cortisol test or that sort of stuff. And I started finding that I almost felt out of integrity, because I typically had the problem solved by the time the lab results came back in. So, so somebody that's, bridging the gap, functional medicine is a beautiful thing. And I agree. I'd love to go to their seminars and learn, the pathways and so on. But then I work out ways to muscle test that and figure it out, so I can figure it out immediately while they're on the table in a couple of minutes, instead of waiting for something to come back. And if it's a thyroid panel or glucose or something,
that's true. It takes time to get labs back, right? It's like, right. It'd be great. I mean, maybe in our time we'll have something like super, super fast, because lab testing has improved timeline wise.
What they can test on labs is just, exponentially blown up. So it's awesome.
Yeah. Years ago, I had on, I think he was a geneticist. I'm a geek. But shout out to Dr. Anthony J. He's the author of a book about it's estrogeneration, the impact of plastics and everything else, right? Hormone imbalances, everything. And then one of his side hustles he created when he was, working for one of the big hospitals, medical testing type of, genetical, whatever labs. He's like, hey, do you want to do a health analysis? And I'm like, cool. What's involved? And he goes, well, he's like, that company like 23andMe and those guys? I'm like, yeah. He goes, never pay for that. I was like, okay, where are you going with this? He's like, well, except buy the entry level thing, the analysis. He's like, don't pay for the upgrades, because whatever they spit at you in a report is nothing to what I can do for you. I'm like, okay. He goes, so get that, get a deep dive blood panel done, right? But then send me the raw data files, and then we're going to geek out. And I'm like, okay. This is years ago, so this might be what you do. I don't know. And I said, what's going to happen? He's like, do you want to do a podcast? I'm like, absolutely. I have nothing to hide. Let's dig in. And to this day, I cycle on and off. I'm not a big supplement guy anymore, but my genetic markers showed that I would benefit from possible integration of glutathione.
Okay.
And I tested this, by the way. This past week, we were away on vacation skiing in Whistler, and I did not take it with me. And I felt a little bit more irritable and stressed. Now, that could have been travel. That could have been doing our crazy backcountry heli skiing. But, I came back, and then the past couple of days added the supplement back into my regime, and I'm pretty copacetic. So I just thought it was super cool, because he spit out this Word doc to me of basically it was a pros and cons health analysis based on, as you were hinting, these key words here: nutrition and supplementation. Basically foods and chemicals, for example, how they interact, pro and con, what I'm more susceptible to, what I'm not, right? All that stuff. I loved it. I was like, yes. So it got me hooked, because now every year I pay for my own deep dive blood panel just to see if my lifestyle is changing as I'm aging, or am I I don't know, am I becoming more superhuman, if you will? I don't know. But because the average blood work you get from an MD is worthless to me now. I don't know if
Right.
that's just too strong of a statement to say. What are your thoughts?
It's an indicator, yes, it is very minimal, and they use that like if they don't see something on their, CBC, their general blood test,
Mm-hmm.
then you're okay. There's nothing wrong. Even though, I had a guy today, his labs look phenomenal, but he's head to toe rash,
Wow.
and big, circular rash, he's got parasites go very prolifically, and his labs looked fine. So the doc's like, unfortunately, this not to bash functional med, his functional med doc was like, you're in great shape. There's nothing
Mm.
wrong with you,
Yeah.
So um, he needs to look. That doctor needs to, maybe do a stool sample or add,
Dig deeper.
look a little deeper, right?
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of muscle testing, because the reality is every muscle has an associated gland or organ with it, and so if the pec clavicular muscle is not firing properly, we look at stomach function. If they have low back pain in the flank area, we look at large intestine function. So when we identify what the primary weakness is, and that's the beauty of headaches for me. I'll cycle back to that or circle back to that. But again, every muscle has associated organs. When we find these organ dysfunctions, these weaknesses, then we look at, is it a structural need or structural compromise that's compromising the muscle? Is it a nutritional problem, something they're eating or a chemical they're exposed to? Is it a supplement that they're deficient in? Or was there an emotional trigger? Every gland and organ has specific associated emotions with it as well. So I mentioned the stomach related muscles. That stomach has emotions of oversympathetic, low self-esteem, disgust. So if you had some, losing, somebody was going down for the count, and you're oversympathetic about what they were going through, then that can compromise the stomach function. So that's where, as the purview, the one person pursuing ultimate health, we want to do that sleuthing due diligence, if you will, to figure out, oh, ever since this emotional event, my stomach, my digestion, hiatal hernia has all been acting up. Okay, maybe we need to look at somebody or clinician that can help desensitize, correct for that trigger, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Or, if it just kind of came about over time, then we look at, okay, maybe you're nutritionally deficient in calcium or vitamin B1, which is thiamine, to help the stomach function better. So those are all potential triggers. And just to circle back to the reason the book is called The Headache Advantage is that the advantage of head pain is that it ultimately tells me what the priority is for a person. So if they've got, a list of 15 different symptoms that, we're writing out as we go through the consultation, and then they talk about a headache, the location of the head pain tells the story. And so the location of that head. So we've got the 7 patterns laid out on the book. Those of you that are visually watching, we've got the green right-sided head is a gallbladder problem, and so the gallbladder acupuncture meridian starts next to the eye and kind of dances around the right side of the head.
Hmm.
The yellow head, left-sided head pain there, that's a stomach problem. So I talked about the sympathetic,
So tied
oversympathetic
into the gut
emotions.
biome, right?
So gut biome is going to be the arrow that's going around. Gut biome would be more of a whole head type of a headache, or a head, I
Oh.
call it a headband type of pattern, which is what I had back in the whatever it was 80s when I started having these problems and led me down the healthcare regime. So then the purple headache is the pain, which is more commonly called tension headache. That's on the back of the head. That's a thyroid problem, typically under functioning thyroid, which is not activating digestive enzymes properly. So that's that tension headache.
Hmm.
And then the 2 pink circles on on the sides of the head. That's ladies, that's your bitemporal headache that comes along with estrogen surges or poor estrogen metabolism.
Hmm.
So that's going to be the bitemp, kind of like where our headphones are.
What if men get that temporal area? Because every once in a while I'll get that trigger. But it's usually on the right side versus the left side, right? So, and it's once in a great while, and I just figured, now granted, I know alcohol's a poison. So is it because I had a drink, which I've cut way back on that over the years, because again, I'm a
Cool.
health geek and I know that
Yeah.
I'm basically introducing a toxin into the body. So,
Right.
yeah,
With
yeah.
the desired result.
Right. But it's very rare it's from that, but because I
Right.
don't drink that much, but yeah. So,
Yeah, so you said one side. So that again, if it's right-sided, that's a gallbladder problem. If it's left-sided, then that's a stomach problem.
hmm.
If it's the when it's both temples simultaneously, that tends to have to do with hormonal surges. So it still would be
Oh.
estrogen metabolism. We men do have estrogen. Estrogen, testosterone are
So
very
if you find yourself
similar.
doing that,
Yeah.
therapeutic rub
Oh.
of the temples, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it could go back to estrogeneration, right? Could or est what do you call it?
His book's called Estro Generation, Dr. Anthony J. Yeah.
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
could be that you're drinking your water out of a plastic bottle and you're getting the
Mhm.
estrogenic effects from the plastics, for example. Most of the time, it's because that one of those pathways in the liver that we were just referring to, like your glutathione pathway, maybe that's not breaking the hormones down properly and setting you up for this type of headache.
Mm.
So I would suspect, when you're current on your glutathione products, that you're probably going to be a lot less likely to have those types of headaches,
So it's like
incidentally.
one of your hot points I noticed in your background data was like your what we're talking about right now is basically how you've been started cracking the code, so to speak, right, on those
Sure.
common triggers, that stomach to stress relationship. And I
Right.
think that's one of my key little. I'm a high energy guy, like
Sure.
always been. Anybody who knows me, like, dude, I'm like, my wife says I've got possibly a case of OCD. I'm like, okay, or I'm just a high performer. I mean, I went from farm kid to corporate guy chasing dreams to hating it all, then gave it up for a couple of years to go serve as a hotshot wildland firefighter, one of the elite crazy guys out west where you live,
Mhm.
and beat the snot out of myself for like 2 years. So
Yeah.
clearly I don't mind embracing stressful
Right.
choices.
Right.
And I'm an adrenaline junkie, racing mountain bikes, rock climbing, skydiving, all of it. So, ergo our last week, heli skiing,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah. Mhm.
so clearly I can embrace the stress, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean it's going to prevent me from having side effects, is what I'm learning, right?
Right. To tolerance, right? And so I'm a bike racer as well, and it's all about for me training as hard as I can without falling off the edge.
Yep.
Ultimately, when we overtrain, we end up sick or injured or that sort of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So especially as it gets closer to race season, I'm doing a whole lot more intensity and that sort of stuff. And so I have supplements, I have things that I do. I have to make sure that I'm
Open
staying
road
balanced.
endurance or track.
Mountain bike. I
Yeah.
mostly do endurance mountain bike
Yeah.
racing. I did do a century. I mean, while we're talking about performance. Back in my 30s, I dreamt of getting a 100-mile bike ride done in under 5 hours, and so I did a couple of
On
them
mountain or roadie?
on a
Yeah,
road
roadie. Yeah.
bike.
I do both.
So
So,
I agree.
yeah.
I do as well. Most of my racing is endurance mountain biking,
Yeah.
but there's especially this time of year since it's technically base season, I tend to do a
Let's
little bit
see.
more road riding and more, long duration, low intensity stuff. So anyway, back in my 30s, I reached my goal of breaking or getting a 5 hour century done. I'm now 30 years later, and I did that same century in 4.5 hours last weekend.
Nice. Nice. I did
So,
fun for you. I tried doing it right before COVID. It was my first 100-mile mountain biking race.
awesome.
It's called the Wilderness 101 here in the mountain range east of Penn State main campus, central Pennsylvania. And
Okay.
you wouldn't think because there's no high altitude, but
Mm-hmm.
the course, because it's 100 miles, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
it's like gravel grinder stuff, like
Right.
forest road stuff, but they
Yeah.
incorporate in single track on the descents. It's 10,000 feet of climbing in one
In a
day
100 miles. Yeah.
across 100 miles. The
That's a,
pros were
yeah.
banging this thing out with their tree trunk legs in like 6, 7 hours. So the first year, I had collapsed a lung and had surgery to fix that, and then got married. We had a skiing wedding in Banff, Canada. And then that July, and by the way, they said it in July. I mean, they want to torture you. I mean, it's hot. And
Yeah.
so it definitely impacted my training. I still went for it. I made it to mile 67, one stop before the biggest climb, and guys were dropping like flies from heat exhaustion. So I didn't finish it the first time. Then COVID hit, and that was supposed to be the 20th anniversary. So I went the next year and went back at it again and finished it.
Okay.
Awful.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, but it took me, I think that's the longest I've been in a saddle. I think it was something crazy. Like I had to go back and look. It was like 12, 13 hours to do the race. And there were
Yeah.
still people in it longer than me. But I mean, it was awful.
Yeah.
But I was like, I mean, I guess that falls under ultra. Is that an ultra?
Right.
Or
That's
mountain?
that's 100 miles on a mountain bike, especially with 10,000 is massive. I mean, most of the guys I ride with are, competitive at the Leadville here. Well,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
in Colorado.
Yep.
I'll do Big Sugar is on my calendar this year
Yeah.
to go
I
do
did a
that.
Leadville
And
qualifier in the Austin Rattler out on ranch in Austin, Texas years ago when I was
mhm,
firefighting. I was living between Arizona and Colorado, and
okay.
it was a qualifier down there for the big,
Yeah, for Leadville.
Leadville.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except they got altitude to really beat the snot out of you.
Right. So we do this kind of stuff, right, to learn, right?
Mhm.
Kind of my point there was 30 years ago, I thought I was pretty wise. I was already a doctor and that sort of stuff. Um, but now I got more gray hair. I'm wiser, right? I have to make better choices. I have to make, more sound choices to still race. I was riding with a group of 20 somethings that are all,
Mhm.
in the cycling industry. And so, working out as a team, we crushed it. But again, I was 30 years their senior.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
And
mean, it's like, which is still mutant level, by the way, with that age
mhm.
demographic, but, and you knew enough about body awareness, nutrition, supplementation, right? You've been training a long time. But in the end, it's still like, okay, I'm going up against 20-year-old studs
Yeah.
as a
Mhm.
team. Like, eventually, even I have to admit it, like, okay, I might need to start recognizing age. Like I'm only 47. I'll be 48 this year. My wife calls me old guy because she's 5 years younger. And I'm like,
Ah,
no, I'm going to keep plugging that
right.
fountain of youth, man. I'm
Mhm.
just under 6'4". I'm 185 pounds. I'm strong. I'm lean because I focus on health first. So,
Right.
but eventually we have to listen, right? A little bit.
Right, right, right. Well, and that health is quality of life,
Mm.
and people say, "Oh, you're burning up 2 hours of your day to live longer," or whatever it is, and what are you doing? But it's quality of life. I mean,
Yeah.
early on when I had our second kid, I was like, "Oh, it's selfish of me to be out working out and doing this sort of stuff when I've got these two kids at home." It took less than 2 months before I realized when I got home I was useless anyway. I
Yeah.
just get home and just couldn't get off the couch basically. It's like, man, I got to figure out how to keep the exercise as part of the routine. And now we can talk about all the, the dopamine hits and all the, the runner's high and all the stuff that keeps us young and flourishing and that sort
Yep.
of stuff.
Cortisol level
And
reduction, stress reduction,
right,
all of that.
and
We
handling
have
it.
to exercise.
Right.
Actually, have you ever heard of Vinny Tortorich?
I've heard the name, but
He was one of the first personal trainers for the Stars out in LA, originally from Louisiana. He owns the trademark NSNG, No Sugar, No Grains. I helped him crowdfund his first couple of documentary movies. So he and I go way back, but he's pretty viral. Fitness Confidential is his book and his podcast.
okay.
But he was an ultra cyclist, ultra racer, like same thing. He would go do the
Hmm.
oh God, what's the Desert Valley race in California?
Oh, Death, isn't
The
it Death
Death.
Valley or something like
You know
that?
what I'm
Or
talking about? Like
yeah.
there's a foot race version and there's a biking version. Either way,
Right.
you're biking through Death Valley. Like what?
Right.
But he's that guy. And now he's in
Right.
his
Okay.
60s. He left LA a couple years back and moved out here to Virginia. He married one of the original James Bond actresses from England. I forget her name.
Okay.
Serena Scott Thomas. Anyway, so
Nice.
he's well connected in the health and fitness space. He's probably one of the early godfathers of before keto, really got
Wow.
viral.
Hmm.
Because again, he owns a trademark, no sugar, no grains. So
Hmm.
yeah, removing inflammatory responses, right? Seed oils, sugars, grains, all that. So he's a big advocate for that. But obviously, he's had lots of experts like you. I could probably
Hmm.
get you connected, by the way. But yeah,
Sounds
it's like
great.
it's stuff like that. Like you don't have to be a peak athlete to go down this route that you and I are going on. It just so
Hmm.
happens that you and I are geeks about health and fitness.
Hmm.
But one of the
Hmm.
reason why I brought him up is one of his classic quotes is, guys, he's like, when I got people ready for movies and everything else, he said, everybody assumed I was just going to train the crap out of them in the gym. And he's like,
Hmm.
the first thing I had to target was how they're fueling their body and their brains, right?
Hmm.
What you're doing in the kitchen, what are you doing in the restaurants, right? He's like, your kitchen is literally your fuel source. It's what comes out of your body is what you putting in. But he
Hmm.
goes, the exercise component to this day, he goes, yeah, he's still a heavy trainer, even though he's aging, but he goes, that's the fountain of youth. Exercise is the fountain of youth, stress relief, everything else. He's like,
Right.
but like you said earlier in the show, right? How we're fueling our bodies, if you're going to supplement, et cetera, because again, actually help clarify that supplementation
Hmm.
should only be utilized if you're lacking and you're not filling in those essential building blocks, or again, based on your genetics. Now we have all this advanced science. We can test for this stuff and say, well, great,
Yeah.
maybe you aren't fixing your kitchen fast enough, as I like to say. So those are supplementation hacks. I mean, I know
Right.
I've had doctors on this show, experts in the carnivore space, right? Like the one guy out of Australia, he's a neurosurgeon. He will not supplement. He goes, he's like, and he's like a Greek god, like former rugby player, pro athlete, all that. And he goes, look, he's like, you got everything you need. I was like, so he's got his perspective. So
Yeah.
I always like to educate people. Like I've done supplementation on and off over the years. I said that with the glutathione, but I think it is important to not just throw quote unquote everything in the kitchen sink here.
Hmm.
Let's get scientific. Let's do some analysis, which I think
Right.
you and I definitely agree on.
Right. Well, and ultimately listen to our bodies, right? And so,
Yeah.
I mean, as you eloquently said, it is supplementation. It is to supplement what we're not getting through our diet. The sad reality is that food sucks in America for the most part,
Oh yeah.
so we can do our part, and, just to piggyback on that, my tagline is organic is cheaper than chemo.
Ah, I
So
like that. I like that. Yeah.
so when we eat organic, we get all the literally thousands of times the amount of minerals in there. Minerals are going to help us be more rock-like, more resilient against emotional triggers and stress, more calm, cool, and collected. So the minerals are beneficial. We're going to limit the amount of pesticides, since pesticides are mostly what's causing a lot of the cancers and things.
Well,
So
what's the actually I learned this many years ago
glyphosate,
too. Ides. What does Ides translate to in Latin? Death. So yeah, cut that out.
eyes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, we want to keep the toxic metals out, which means pesticides and that sort of stuff. So eating the organic vegetables, getting those, grains are all adulterated. They have, for the most part, has that Roundup, the glyphosate in there that
Mhm.
compromises gallbladder function, which is why the right-sided headache is the most common type of headache, in America, at least. I've
Oh, is
traveled to
that one of the
Europe.
biggest ones? Interesting.
Yeah. And so, I've been to Europe a few times in the last couple of years, and I can eat the bread there. I'll splurge and not get blown out.
I proved to my wife this past summer, 2024, we went to do a Greek islands tour. And I
Hmm.
said before I left, because I have not touched bread, pizza, any of that crap in years, because
Right.
I'm like you. I
Hmm.
know what we allow in this country. Our FDA is
Hmm.
broken.
Right.
And again, I'm a guy that grew up on a farm,
Hmm.
so I'm
Hmm.
old school.
Hmm.
But I said, hey, when we go over there, I was like, I'll eat that. I'll eat whatever. I want to respect the culture. Whatever that sweet little old lady at the little cafe puts on the plate, I'll eat it. And she's like, BS. And I say, no, because again, is it what I truly want? Not necessarily, but I'm trying to respect the culture. But also, I know that in those countries, they don't allow everything that we do to our food over here.
Right.
So I told her, I was like, I already know I'm not to worry about the pesticides, the chemicals, the
Mhm.
adulterated bioengineering of blah, blah, blah. Like
Right. Wheat,
in
corn, soy.
Italy, they still have the original strain of wheat because they've never changed it. They've never tried modifying it, making the stalks stronger and shorter so the seed heads can get bigger and they don't break off in wind and the field crop gets a higher yield. All the things that we've justified, quote unquote, justified here in this country. And we never bother testing the side effects
Right.
of our amazing science, along
Right.
agriculture.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
starting to become more readily understood,
Mm-hmm.
as the covers getting pulled back on glyphosate and its, toxic effects, and the inhibition of bile production, the obliteration of the intestinal lining. I mean, all the cancers and autoimmune conditions that are, side effects or secondary aspects of consuming, wheat, corn, soy, or oats that have this glyphosate in them. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we want to minimize that as best we can. So even, I mean, I do everything I can to avoid it. Once in a while, it shows up when in the testing that we do, in my office. So I'm taking supplements to offset to make sure. And again, supplements, they're supplementing what we may not get in our diet. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to shift based on our training plans. It's going to shift based on the stress that we're going through. If we're in a chill season vacationing through the Greek Isles, then life's a little easier. We're not stressing about what we need to get accomplished in the next 10
There was no
minutes.
complaints on that trip. It was very
Right.
relaxing. I love the Greeks. They're awesome.
Yeah, I,
Yeah.
I agree. And the Mediterranean diet, right? It
Mhm.
works with all the olive oil and so on, and lamb, I mean, lamb's a superfood for me, so all that
Yeah.
stuff pays off and works
Yeah, I
well.
learned that on the islands. They can't raise beef because of how dry the climate is. And lamb and goat, well, basically lamb, but there was some goat
Uh-huh.
too. But I was having so much fun experimenting. It was just great. So
Right,
yeah.
right. It's a beautiful thing. And so yeah, we unfortunately the foods are adulterated, so we do end up needing to supplement potentially. I've been a very active cyclist. I've landed on my head a few times, so I take
Oof.
some herbs to to correct for some concussions that I've had. Um, yeah, and that's kind of been one of the latest wins for me. Some new herbs that had just come out, and then lion's mane is a mushroom with lithium in it. It tends to
Mhm.
work really well to rebuild that microglia, the protective mechanism that we lose
That's
when we
gone very viral the past couple of years. And big
right.
influencers like Joe Rogan and others definitely talk about it. I mean, that's definitely
Mhm.
become a very popular supplement out there. So
Right,
yeah.
right. And my personal experience when I started taking that, I'd come home from, crazy day, sorry if patients are listening to this, hearing people complain all day,
It's
you
okay.
know,
It
and I
comes.
get, so yeah, so I get home, I typically would have been fried, just kind of hang my tongue out, after, getting some of this healing my brain from those old concussions.
Well, you
I
have
get
to be on
home, I just don't want
sensory
to work.
overload, aren't you? I mean, as a
Yeah.
doctor, it's not really a complaint. It's just like you're taking all of that in.
Yeah.
I can't I
Yeah.
can't fathom the amount of processing that you have to do. So if there's a hack or a supplement to help you like super perform through that and
Right.
reset, heck yeah, I'd take it.
Yeah, have to, because I'm intimately living, walking through these bummer seasons with people, with hundreds of people a week.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's so we got a biohack, right? And anyway, so all that to, I take some different herbs when it's high intensity, race season. Right now I take more, foods and supplements that are more along, the good fats because I'm training predominantly aerobically,
Hmm.
more zone 2, 3 type of training. So
Yep, I'm a
my
zone two
program's
trainer.
different.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Vinny's a big
love it.
advocate of that. He's a guy. He goes, ladies and gentlemen, if you're trying to, quote unquote, burn fat and lose weight, because that's a big part of his following. He goes, he's purely preaches zone two
Mhm.
training. And as an
Yeah.
endurance athlete, I agree. Like it was fun, really, years ago, getting more focused on that and learning how to target the heart rate. And again, like I as a roadie, I'll go out and do 100 miles on a Saturday. I mean,
Hmm.
granted, I'd be
Hmm.
if I was training for to do like a big charity event or something like that. I wish more charity rides existed in mountain biking. It just seems to be a road cycling thing more than anything.
Right.
But yeah,
Huh?
that's why I'm glad that I found out you were a cyclist. I was like, I can geek out all day on that.
Right.
Well, on these notes, because I want to make sure we don't skip something. We're hitting on a lot of hacking, right? I love the biohacking hit. I got into that years ago. Obviously, I'm wearing my blue blockers. It's in the evening here. I got light around me, but also like I had on the great. I don't know if he's great anymore, but he was pretty cool. Dr. Jack Cruz. He's one of the early godfathers of mitohacking, as he called it. He goes, oh, he's like, well, when you're ready, Scott, we'll get you into mitohacking. I'm like, mitohacking? He's like, yeah, mitochondria of the cell. He goes, biohacking is entry level. You got to get to the mitohacker level. So guys like that, I just love bringing on the show. But
Right.
talk about hacking. And so you have spent so much time into the subject because of your own childhood. You then, and your keyword here is decoding, right? You decoded the
Mhm.
headaches, right? You figured out.
Mhm.
And now, granted, the cover of the book, you hit on those four images, but you actually had
Mhm.
there's 7 specific patterns.
Right.
So how do we get from the four head shots that you had on the cover
Mhm.
of the book that we showed in the
Mhm.
video to these 7 specific patterns? Are the 7 specific patterns then related to those four heads directly, or
So
how does that extrapolate?
the cover actually has all seven headaches laid out in four
Oh,
heads. So
oh,
like,
let me
so
share
you got
share
the
together. Okay, let's geek on that. So I have
so
I have
we
three
talked.
monitors. Let's use it.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got the green right-sided head is a gallbladder. We talked about that glyphosate.
Hmm.
And then the left, we talked about stomach pain. Then the bitemple is the pink, that's going to be equal on both sides.
Okay.
We talked about the purple tension headache. We talked about the whole head. That's the arrow going around the head. That's like
Hmm.
the tight headband. The two we didn't cover
Ah.
yet is the red. That's the consummate head on forehead on the hand, or the hand on the forehead,
Yeah.
that's stress, that's chronic cortisol inhibiting stomach acid, or basically
So that's
inhibiting,
what I was
compromising the
missing.
stomach lining.
You see, yeah.
Yeah.
So the four
And then the
circles is the
pituitary.
four of the symptoms. Then obviously the red dots and zones identify the other three. Okay,
Yeah,
that's what I totally missed.
then the
Okay.
blue dot was the what I call cyclops headache. So
Mhm.
that blue dot in the center, that's the pituitary spazzing out, if you will, or struggling.
Hmm.
Pituitary is very vulnerable to viral
Hmm.
stressors, much like the hypothalamus. And pituitary gets compromised, ladies, if you had an epidural, not epidural, but a pitocin, induced labor or something, that is mimicking what the pituitary was supposed to do. Or kids, if kids are
Ah.
slow growth, and that's under functioning pituitary. I've had several women that, one of my favorite stories on this was a gal that came to see me, flew in from another state to take care of her fertility, because she had breast augmentation because she never grew boobs on her own. She had to take the
Okay.
pill to have a menstruation, to have a cycle. We put her on a supplement to heal and rebuild the pituitary, and she was pregnant the next month, and she'd been trying for 3 years up to that point.
Wow.
So, I had several last week that had that cyclops type of a headache, because their pituitary wasn't functioning quite as well as it should have.
Okay.
So, so that's the pituitary head. That's probably the least common of the 7 headaches. The forehead, that's a fairly common one. Lyme gets a lot of press. The common thread with all the Lyme pathogens is that it inhibits that sulfation pathway, which is what breaks down the stress, the cortisol hormone. So when that sulfation pathway doesn't function right, that's when your wife starts calling you, OCD, because we're not, because then serotonin's high, so we're stressing on, getting to safety and getting to the victory.
Yeah.
There's some of that's going to be beneficial for us. We're wired to figure it out when that's what
It drives me
serotonin's
nuts.
about.
Like we get ready
Mhm.
for a vacation, and all of a sudden I get a little stressed, like packing, and then like little things set me off. But a bomb could go off, and I'm completely calm. I'm completely ready. If there's an emergency, like like a car can flip over, and I'll just pull over calmly. I have a med kit in the car. Like she's like, I don't get it. She's like, if it's like the end of the world, you're completely fine. And I was like,
That's right.
that's just how I'm wired, right?
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know.
well trained. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's what they teach in the armed services, armed forces, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
Teach
that
them
was a lot of, I mean,
how.
as a hotshot, like it was very militaristic. So they,
Right.
just like the Marines, like they break you down and build you back up. They want to see your limits. They want to get you to that limit and then train you under those conditions. So you are more conditioned and you don't freak out.
Mhm.
Granted, there's probably
Mhm.
side effects of that,
Well,
but
it's
yeah.
good in the short term, but when we're stuck in that, then we
Yeah.
get the frontal headaches, right? And we compromise the stomach lining. Cortisol is a catabolic hormone
Mm.
ultimately, and which means it breaks the body down. It's going to break down muscle. So certainly when we're overtraining, we're breaking down muscle. We need to then heal up and recover properly.
Yeah.
So that frontal headache means that you're not managing that. The body's not managing the stress hormones properly, and it's going to manifest as a frontal headache.
Do you have a chapter on that? I bring that up because in my book I
Hmm.
did. So you want to be a hot shot. I
Right.
I call out not the headaches, but I call
Hmm.
out the importance of awareness around stress because a lot of people don't realize that was my first understanding a little bit into that
Hmm.
like military, first responder, paramedic, EMT, police,
Yeah.
fire world.
Hmm.
Because at the end of our fire season, we would just kill it all summer long, anywhere from 1,800 to 2,000 hours in just 6 months. Because obviously
Hmm.
peak wildfire season is
Right.
the summer. So you're doing 16-hour shifts 2 weeks straight before you get your regular days off. It's just go, 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 go.
Right.
And then at the end of the season, I remember my rookie year, I planned a trip to go backpack Ireland. And people are like, you've been backpacking for 6 months straight and living in the woods. And I was like, I know, well, it's already in me. But then I did it. But then when I got home, I did not want to go to the gym. I was burnt. And I
Yeah. Yeah.
realized that's that accumulated exhaustion. I'm sure I could have benefited for some supplementation or being aware of your practice
Right.
because
Zone 2
yeah,
training.
exactly. Because it took me forever to get back into my biking. Like it was rough. I mean, the second year now I was aware of it, right? So
Hmm.
I was already figuring things out, right? Getting back into my chiropractic way of life and finding those things to try and hack it. because I didn't like not wanting to function.
Right.
And it was a big wake up call. And I think for me, and other people hear this, people need to be aware of it, right? You got to be like, hey, listen to your body, like listen to your mind, be aware. Like if things don't feel right, go see a professional, right? I mean,
right. Yeah, 100%. Listen to your body. I mean, there's biochemical pathways that we are wired to basically shut it down when we surpass threshold, right? And the hypothalamus is, regulates the thyroid and overall metabolism and so on. That all starts becoming inhibited under that chronic stress. So then we can't make that get up and go hormone anymore because it's God saying to shut it down back, spend a day in bed, buddy.
Yeah.
You've been
Which was
pushing
very
it
hard
too
to do.
long. Right. And, those of us that are, driven, it's like I don't have time to do that. It's kind of like, I mean, for me, eating salad is a challenge because it takes so long to do it, I got
love it.
places to be, people to see,
And I think we're all guilty of that because that's again a lot of my following. Like, I bring on entrepreneurs and authors and big public speakers and performance coaches, and it's not just doctors and scientists and everything else. And I got fire in my logo, my background, so it's like, okay, yeah, it's kind of my target audience. I like to target those high performers or the people looking to build a better life and succeed. But along those experiences in that pathway, I myself have held myself accountable and realized, okay, you don't know everything. You can burn out and you can have major side effects that could, worst case scenario, affect you the rest of your life. Like one of your images there, it talks about a headache could literally relate to heart attack. I'm not trying to freak people out, but it's like, that's the worst case scenario. But again, if we let these things go that hardcore, that long, it can get that bad. That's the scary part. Yeah.
Right. And, back to that frontal headache, that chronic cortisol, that sets up dementia, and so, yeah, I mean, that's medicine's game, trying to freak people out.
Yeah.
But people really do need to understand this because it's going to help inspire them to make change. Right. So if it's like, it's just a back pain, it's just a headache, that's a whole different thing than, I'm working on dementia if I don't make this correction. Right. So understanding that gives us a little bit more inspiration, a little bit more motivation to use somebody like me, use the book, use the resources that, we've got resources there's forever now with all the information age to figure it out. We have to be our own advocate. That is, so the legal industry, for medicine has shifted where, okay, your doctor didn't solve the problem. It's up to you to go figure it out. Back, when I first started into practice, it was like doctor didn't figure it out. It was a malpractice thing for him. Now it's like, no, you're the patient, you're the person suffering. Why didn't you go talk to somebody else?
I'm a big advocate for that. We have to be personally accountable for our health. A lot of people take the old, I guess I can call it old school because I'm new school. The old school, like, oh, well, the doctor will answer it. Well, now that you've modern medicine, whatever, you're in and out in 10 minutes. They ain't finding anything. They're going to slap you with a script and put you on a drug. And I call it the pharmaceutical Band-Aid. I don't want nothing to do with it. What am I going to do? I'm going to hack it. I'm going to research it. I'm going to figure it out, or I'm going to start getting that second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth opinion if I have to, because I truly believe health comes first. And if you want to perform in your career or your business or your marriage or whatever your goals are, if you're not taking care of the head, the body, everything, it's just going to fall apart. Right.
Totally. Right. So
and it's not really the doctor's fault. Yeah. You guys are here to help figure it out, especially more on the chiropractic side than the MD side. I'll say it. You don't have to say it. But I do know good, caring MDs, but unfortunately they've been, their practice got bought out by big corporate and now they're sucked into the big medical system. And now they want to spend 20, 30 minutes talking through the stuff, but they can't. And so there are people who care and they're kind of stuck in that broken system. And that's a whole different show. But on those notes, because again, obviously people can go get the Headache Advantage and check out the site headacheadvantage.com, but we've been screen sharing on the episode today. But like, is there some hot targeted, your years of experience, like, okay, even if you didn't get a chance to get the book yet, like, okay, off of this episode, like, what are like what do I jump on right away, Dr. V? Like,
Mhm.
what are my, because I like to treat myself as an N1 experiment. I'm like, hey guys,
100%.
I'm the N1 experiment. I'll try it
Right.
before I tell anybody else to do it, or at least look
Yep.
into it. So,
Right.
yeah.
And then others benefit from that, right?
Hmm.
So first and foremost, learn to listen to your body. Barry Sears back in the zone day, he made a statement for, we're only as good as our last meal. So every time you eat, pay attention to how you feel. Did you get sinusy after you ate that meal? Okay, something crashed your immune system.
Was that the zone
Probably,
diet days?
yeah,
Yeah, the zone
that was a
days. Yeah, okay.
zone, right,
Yeah.
right,
All
and
right.
yeah. So, and then
I'm with you.
there's been a million other books along that line in that genre. But I mean, that was just the point was great. That we're as good as our last meal. So I mean, my friends always say, "Well, don't you cheat when you go on vacation?" It's like, no, I like to feel good on vacation too.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
I still want to function and help and do everything I do. So pay attention to how you feel. If you get nasally, then something crashed your immune system. If you feel sleepy or aloof or you crave sugar after you eat, something that you just ate caused an blood sugar dump, an insulin dump. And so that's why you're starting to check out. So cut those foods out. For me, and so blood type does have, it should really be called immune type, but blood type gives a resource to at least have a list of, starting point of what food triggers might be in there. For me, if I eat chicken, I'm going to crash and burn. I'm going to be hypoglycemic. I'm going to be, all ADD-ish and unfocused. Tomatoes would do the same thing. I'll like fall asleep in church or that stuff if I have tomatoes.
Wow.
So when I eat those, I know that, well, I mean, when I used to eat those, I started recognizing, oh, these are the symptoms I have when I eat them. So I don't touch it. Um, but when my wife is an A blood type, she eats chicken, she's fine,
I'm A positive. But I mean, I'm hardcore red meat, and I'm like pardon the reference, I'm a brick shit house. I just go, man. It's
right,
like,
right.
yeah, and my wife, she loves chicken. So I was like, okay, I'll do whatever you want. But find what works for you. Like to your point,
Right.
if you're not getting the side effects,
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. So meal by meal, pay attention to what's happening. So you get those foods out that are causing, the insulin dumps, the checking out, the cravings after you eat, you get those out, then, if a person's trying to lose weight, their weight's going to stabilize. It's going to get down to a healthy number. They're going to be more focused. Their sleep's going to be better. The more unstable blood sugar is, the more a person wakes up at night. So if
Mhm.
you're a person that, can't stay asleep more than 2 hours, your blood sugar's all over the place. Start making those meal by meal changes, and you're gonna feel a million times better
I'm
and
going to
be all
cut
you can
that
be.
clip right there and play that for my wife because she's a very smart woman. She's a doctor of equine medicine and chiropractic, and can't stay asleep past 5 a.m. and wakes up. And I've tried explaining these things.
Right, right.
Like, baby, you know that I sit and talk to people way smarter than not myself on purpose. So I'm cutting that clip and using it.
So organs all have 2 hour windows. So for example, the colon does most of its processing time between 5 and 7 a.m. So if her colon's not functioning optimally, and to use that example, then she's not going to be able to stay asleep, through that 5 to 7 window.
Mm.
So maybe she needs a probiotic, or she's eating a dairy or something that's compromising the way her colon's functioning. So we want to figure these things
Or
out.
maybe not have that Chardonnay right before bed.
Right.
Maybe stop like a couple
Right.
hours.
At
Let
least
that.
make, if you're going to do it, make sure it's Italian, or, where they don't use glyphosate, right? Or organic,
Right?
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, believe me, I'm willing to buy the nicer stuff. We don't
Yeah.
have kids, so I make that joke all
Yeah.
the time. Like, baby, we both work hard. We both have pretty successful businesses. Like, I'm happy to do something nicer, especially if it's going to remove these side effects. But this is the tips
Right.
that we're talking about. You're like,
Hmm.
we don't think about those things. People just take it for granted. She's like, oh, that's just my favorite wine. I'm like,
Right.
what if that's the problem?
Is
So
it really worth it, right?
yeah,
Or change the wine. Maybe it's a different one, right?
yeah.
So stabilizing blood sugar, doing it. So like, where we were going, right, is listen to your body. Every meal is going to tell a story, and the better you listen, and the better you start getting those trigger foods out, the better you're going to feel, function, and be, right. Then you're going to be able to accomplish more in a day, right? If you eat properly, and exercise. I mean, I always tell people, I don't have time to exercise. You don't have time not to exercise, right? You're going to be 3 times as productive in the hours that you have if you get an hour of exercise than if you're not getting exercise. You're going to be a sloth, right?
Oh, I've baby stepped people years ago. I was like, you know what? Give me 10 minutes. I used to train people years ago. I'm like, give yourself 10 minutes. I was like,
Mhm.
stand in your bedroom or at your desk. I've had a permanent standing desk for almost 10 years. I don't have
Right.
there's no chair here.
Yeah.
There's no motors. I had it built this way for a reason because
Right.
my posterior chain is engaged. I'm like, because I
Yep.
travel a lot, so I don't want to be sitting. So I'm like, these are the things, research it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're having, hip pain, like, okay, stand more. If I'm at my office, I'm like, I'm going to pause for a second. Let's do some air squats, right? Do some
Right.
lunges, body weight training. You're moving the
Yeah.
body.
Doesn't
We all
take
can do
much.
it. We all can do it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
what? You
Yeah.
just have a baby? There you go. Now you got resistance training. Just hold the baby and do lunges. So
There you go.
this isn't rocket science, right?
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. The information's been out there for decades. And even before the information was out there, everybody knew, right? And they just had to do it to eat before.
We're coming to the end of the show. I was about to say something. I'm intrigued to see your point of view as the co-host. Is that we got in our own way?
Hmm.
Is that too general? I think we allowed ourselves to get too intelligent, too smart, and we've unfortunately, from these advancements, especially in the past 50 years,
Hmm.
allowed the basic elemental components of what got us here to
Hmm.
fall to the
Hmm.
wayside. Right? Like,
Right.
ooh, I have all this cool science and chemical development. Cool. I'll just
Hmm.
spray stuff on plants and not do any of the side effect research, right?
Right.
Or
Right.
like changing how farming is done or how preservatives are implemented. And don't get me going on the baking aisle at the grocery store. Right. I mean, that is just, I tell people if there's one aisle to just not go down,
Right.
is that aisle.
Right. Right. Right.
I don't know if you ever read the book or listened to it, Extra Virginity.
Okay.
Great
Yeah.
documentary book on the olive oil industry. That's
Hmm.
that's what people are like, oh, well, that's where the olive oil is. I'm like, no, don't buy that. I
Hmm.
literally, even this, like, actually, California puts out a pretty good product, and I think Costco sells it, and they don't allow what the FDA does. FDA allows you to cut most olive oils in the US up to 20 to 40%. I learned that from an Italian olive oil company. And so when I was buying that more, I would order from them and it would be shipped from Italy and it was not being, poo-pooed. If
Right.
you
Right.
know.
Adulterated.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's a
Right.
great documentary book. I always love bringing it up because that's that self-help work, right? Find the books,
Hmm.
do the research. If you're driving in your car, get it in audio form and just listen to it instead of listening to a song. I
Yeah.
mean, we all can find a way to find time for the exercise, find time for the research,
Hmm.
experiment a little bit, allow time for the experimentation to take root and see if you're actually seeing a change. You
Yeah.
can't just say, great, I'm going to try this one olive oil one time for that
Hmm.
one day, that one week, and then
Right. Hey, my cholesterol didn't go down.
right, all
I
that
had one
stuff.
teaspoon.
Yeah, wow. Okay, you guys really committed on that one.
Right.
So sorry, was there any other big hitters that you wanted to get out after your last stint there? I didn't want to cut
Yeah,
that off.
I mean, basically, where you were going with your last statement, really now the research is trying to correct, what the science was doing in the first place. They were adulterating food, trace the money trail, right?
Hmm.
Who's profiting from packaging and adulterating food. It lasts longer than they can ship it and do all the junk that they do to it, and then our health goes down. Now there's all these now biohacking is a thing because our food supply sucks for the most part. So
It's sad but true. And then at
yeah.
least people had the balls to create biohacking and mitohacking and all the stuff that we can do to ourselves and do the self-analysis, right?
Right,
So
right,
at least some of us are coming up with newer, better things to counteract the newer bad things that we did, right?
right.
So yeah.
Yeah, and so it takes work, to get the healthier foods and make the better choices. But man, it's worth it, right? It's you can have a big old pile of cash, but if you can't get out of bed, you're on machines, and what good is it?
I remember seeing a graphic like that probably 10, 15 years ago. It was like there's a not old. I'd say maybe the guy was maybe his 50s or 60s, so he was young still, but the guy was laid up on a hospital bed, and the graphic was something like, yeah, you're a multimillionaire,
Hmm.
but was it worth it? Right?
Right,
Because you could have all the money in the world, but yeah, I guess you could spend it from the hospital bed, but what's the value you're getting out of it? Like
right,
everything I
right.
do, I want to live as long as possible so I could travel, right?
Hmm.
Have an amazing experiences with my wife, continue to give back and help others along that journey, right? Be riding
Mm-hmm.
my bike into my 80s and 90s. There's a dude that rides down our road here, and I live back in the woods here, but it's great. Popular road cycling route, no shoulders, which is,
Mm-hmm.
it's hopefully the road doesn't get any busier. But this guy is like probably got to be in his 80s. And you could tell he's tall. He's got a big frame bike like I do. I have a
Mm-hmm.
63 roadie.
Yeah.
It's an extra large.
Uh-huh.
And I just see this guy and slow and steady. And he's almost 5 days a week. I see that guy this
That's so
time of
cool,
year
right?
out
Yeah.
there in the winter. And I'm like, I love it. You're
Yep.
my guy. You're my guy.
Yeah.
But he's not
Yeah.
overweight. He's lean. So I'm sure he's probably doing some of the things that we're talking about.
Right,
So
right. And he's still thriving, right?
yeah.
The nutritionist used to work with me. Her salutation on her emails was, you know, most people compromise their health chasing wealth and then have to sacrifice their wealth trying to regain their health.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about with this is, you know, don't wait till it's too late. Learn from the early warning signs.
Yeah.
You know, headache is a great example of the priority for a person. That's the body saying, you know, warning light, check engine. You
Yeah.
know, you're making somewhere in your life, you're making wrong choices that are
I
compromising your
love what you
health.
just said there, the check engine light, like on a car. That's a
Hmm.
great point. I love that because,
Hmm.
again, it's very rare that I get a headache anymore, but like my wife never gets them. So maybe
Hmm.
she's got a biological marker that prevents it, or she's just, it
Hmm.
just manifests that way. But I've learned to be more aware of those things. And when I go see my chiropractor a month, I give her a quick synopsis of what I've observed over the past month. And she
Hmm.
loves patients like me because I tell her everything. And she's like, I
Right,
wish more people would be more self-aware and
right.
would just, even you can, I don't need to journal it. I just memorize it. But
Hmm.
she's like, you always have feedback. I was like, well, I just want to make sure you know that you're valued and I plan on using you. So I always come in
Hmm.
with new problems too if I crash mountain biking or whatever. And
Right,
she's like,
right.
what'd you do this time? I'm like, well, I spent 3 days straight splitting firewood because it was a great workout. She goes, yeah, I could tell. Let's get to
Yeah,
work on that.
right.
But on that note, not every chiropractor, I'll say it,
Hmm.
knows what you know.
Right.
Um, my wife's chiropractor, he's got some different techniques than my chiropractor. She doesn't like
Hmm.
mine because mine takes too long. She wants to be in and out, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Her guy's more like that. And
Hmm.
okay, good for you.
Hmm.
But I like that deeper, longer session. I want to have the conversation and I want her
Hmm.
to do some more muscular tissue work or some analysis and try and find the tension points, stuff like that. Her guy, boom, 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 boom. So
Hmm.
my point is that that's why things like your book, I'm excited, right? The Headache Advantage, again, awesome. This will all be in the show notes, obviously, for people
Thank
listening
you.
to this or finding on YouTube so they can quickly get it on Amazon, etc. But is there is it wrong to share that to your own chiropractor? I guess, or in your world, do you guys versus MD world, right? The
Hmm.
chiropractor world, do you guys find it acceptable when people bring in stuff from another professional in their domain?
Hmm.
Is that weird? I don't know. I always wanted to
My
ask that question. I've had
my
chiropractors
bet.
on before,
Right,
so
right, right. And
yeah.
my best market for the book is doctors, you know, those
Oh,
that are willing to listen. I've got some doctors who my mother-in-law gave her doctor, you know, a stack of flyers for the book and she was out of them in a couple of days.
cool.
So those that are willing, you know, and recognize maybe that they don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
they're a great market. So yeah, really, we should all get along. We should all be sharing information like this. I'm in an hour from now. I'm going to be on another mind share with a group of doctors where we all just kind of
Awesome.
hack. You know what's going on in the world right now.
I love it.
So I mean, I think all of us should be doing that. It's kind of it's not good for the patient. It's not good for the doctor to think that they have all the answers, and
Mhm.
because it's a dead end for the patient, and it keeps the doc from learning. And you know, we need to be humble and recognize that everybody we come in contact with is going to have some answers that you know are a different perspective.
Yeah.
You know, there's a marriage book we're looking at and says, you know, if the husband and wife had the same opinion, one of them would be unnecessary, right?
Oh, that is very true. Well, on that note, before I have you help close out the show, because I'm definitely going to be sharing this, by the way. And it's funny because,
Awesome.
and by the way, just on that note, thank you for taking the time. And obviously, you're promoting a book launch and everything, but obviously,
Mhm.
I've offered my chiropractor and my wife's chiropractor. I always say, hey guys, when you're ready, I'll come because you're local. It's like, I'll bring my gear to you. Let's sit down and do a show. but I can't, they're not against it. It's just they don't follow through. So one, I'm one of those people who believes in taking action and making a difference. So thank you for
100%.
taking action and making a difference, because I can offer the platform, but you still got to take action in life, right? Like all the tips you shared today, we can offer the data, the feedback, the proof. Like my point earlier, right? I still have to take personal accountability for my health, and then utilize the resources to benefit it and change it. So thank you for obviously taking the time to join us today. And I have to get back to my audience as well. So on that note, because you're the guest co-host and this is how I do things, you get to help close out the show. So for years ago, I always said, hey, what's some final words we'll leave behind if they forget all the other stuff that we talked about? But then over the years, after I did my charity launch and my book launch, I was like, and I started calling it a legacy message. And I feel like people in your profession do see the bigger picture and realize as we're aging, there's something about leaving something behind. So have you, through launching the book and having 30 years of practice, is there a bigger, legacy message or a all encompassing thing that you'd like to close the show out with? So
great setup. Yeah. And I mean, obviously I make a couple bucks on a book, it's not about that. It's about changing the way people perceive health and what their body's trying to tell them. Pain is, with the applied kinesiology, the approach to healthcare that I use, it's very, very, very evident that every knot, fibromyalgia is 25 different pain patterns or, different things like that. Every knot tells a story. So I'm here to try to empower you, the listener, to listen to what that pain is telling you. Upper trap tension is typically a blood sugar problem. Pain and weakness on the side of the neck, blood sugar feeding yeast, and that'll manifest as sacroiliac pain or low back, tailbone kind of pain. So all of those tell a story, and I made it my life's mission to Scott points to somewhere here, I know, okay, that's a lung issue, oh, that's a gallbladder issue, that's an adrenal issue, and I can go right to it, and then there's specific food triggers or lifestyle issues that are going to cause that. So my whole thing, my MO at this point, my legacy is listen to your body. It's trying to tell you a story, and be your own advocate to identify what that is. Quality of life goes up, the quantity of years, but even more importantly, the quality of those years exponentially changes. I've often said the best practice management tool I could have would be a crystal ball. Scott, you quit eating, sugar and grains. This is how you're going to look and feel in 80 years. You quit eating, you keep eating your sugar and grains. This is how you're going to look and feel if you make it another 30 years. So that would be the best motivating tool we could have. But pain is kind of that crystal ball to help us understand, oops, these choices are compromising my health. So let's learn from them. Let's be our best advocate. That's going to inspire their doctors, the listener. Your doctor is going to potentially shift their paradigm as they recognize you figuring these things out. Then they're going to tell the next person, hey, this, Scott quit eating sugar and his neck pain went away. What about you?
Yeah, right? What's that? I removed inflammatory responses and I don't have joint pain anymore.
Right. Corn is another biggie. We didn't get into corn too much, but that'll cause cortisol dumping. So that'll set up L5, low back pain, elbow pain. It'll cause ovarian cysts for the girls. So there's triggers all along. There's a lot of those are laid out in the book, but ultimately listen to the body. It's trying to yell at you, tell you a story.
Check engine light. I love that. I love that relationship.
Right.
Doc, thank you, man. Dr. V, this is why I launched a show. This is why years ago, again, approaching 500 episodes, it's about dumping some serious knowledge and just getting through to people, hopefully, and just leaving some truth behind that people could take root of. And that's the beauty of podcasts is, unless, the digital age falls apart and we lose the connectivity. This is evergreen content. I've never deleted a show unless somebody asked me to. Like two people wanted to delete a show. I don't know why. I'm like, oh, well, you do you. But
yeah, I got nothing to hide.
Right. And that's how I roll. I'm like, this is what it is. There you go. We put it all out there. Share if you care. And that's how we roll. So thank you for helping close out the show. Hang tight. I'll give you a proper goodbye off the air. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. V, again, from one Scott to another, it's just awesome to share this type of knowledge and connectivity, especially with aligning on headache awareness, and obviously being cyclists and all other fun things. So ladies and gentlemen, remember, go check out headacheadvantage.com. All the stuff will be in the show notes. And remember, we're here to fuel your health, your business, and your lifestyle if you're a newer listener. Dr. V helped us do it today. So thanks for tuning in. And remember, you too could live the fuel. And we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Sounds good.